Have you ever noticed that some worries carry more weight than others? And not because they're more likely to happen, but because if they did, they'd be nearly impossible to recover from. And for most people, these fears come and go. It's a natural part of life. But for those with OCD or other anxiety conditions, these fears can become all-consuming. As a psychiatrist who specializes in treating OCD, I've come to recognize that it's not the fear itself driving the anxiety. Oftentimes, it's the fear of what will happen afterwards that drives it. It's the worry that they'll fall apart, that they won't be able to recover from it, that life will change forever. And that's what I want to explore today, because I often see OCD attack something deeper than someone's sense of safety, one's faith in their own resilience. And to best illustrate this, I'll go over a case with you. It'll be the case of George, the man whose fear over making a mistake controlled his life. But first, for those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. I'm Dr. Robert. I'm a board-certified psychiatrist. And on this channel, I enjoy making these educational mental health videos. But of course, if you are experiencing any mental health symptoms, please seek the care of a mental health care provider near you. And as always, any case examples or patient stories are greatly altered to protect patient identity. So let's jump into the case of George. He was a 33-year-old attorney. He was a smart guy, intelligent, conscientious, very hardworking. He was the kind of person you wanted working at a law firm, more being your lawyer. He cared deeply about getting work done right. And by outward appearances, he was doing great. He was married in a successful career, had a promising future ahead of him. And then what was supposed to be good news turned out to be a breaking point for him. His wife became pregnant. They were trying to actually have a child, and this was great news. He was initially very, very happy. But then what was previously some anxiety, sometimes ruminative anxiety, began to exacerbate. Now every responsibility felt heavier, every decision mattered more, and every mistake was more dangerous. Before, if he made a mistake at work, missed something, it would trigger a lot of anxiety. He would ruminate about it, lose a few nights' sleep. But after learning he would have a child, have more responsibility, now the anxiety became even more potent. His mind told him now, it's not just a mistake that affects your future, your wife's future. Now it's your unborn child's future. Your entire family is at stake here. So the intrusive thoughts grew louder. And he had to review every document again and again and again, just to make sure there were no errors in it. He would read through his emails multiple times and make sure that there were no mistakes in it. Make sure he didn't say anything offensive, incorrect. Every detail now felt like a life or death decision. And that's a very kind of core experience in OCD, is everything seems to have these grave consequences tied to it. So how did I end up seeing George? Well, interestingly enough, like many patients with OCD, he actually didn't come to me seeking help for OCD, not even insomnia or anxiety. Instead, he wanted help for his focus. He thought he might have ADHD because he couldn't focus on anything at work, at home. He was constantly distracted. I felt like his attention span had completely shrunk. And on the surface, that was definitely true. His attention was zapped. He couldn't focus on anything. But when I dug deeper, it was the worry, the constant reassurance seeking, the constant alertness to potential danger that was preventing him from being able to focus on anything. And his work started to pile up. He was falling behind. And it wasn't because he inherently had an attentional issue. I'll get into this in future videos. I do think OCD has a lot of comorbidity with ADHD, and there is a large attentional aspect to OCD, but definitely in this case, his attention was impaired. But the underlying reason was because the anxiety stemming from the OCD. I think another reason George didn't come to me for OCD and anxiety was it was easier for him to talk about and admit to the attentional issues than it was the anxiety, the core fear. Because these fears, these were not things he shared with anyone, not even his wife, not his coworkers, nobody. It's something that was very, very internal. That's a common feature of OCD as well. There's a lot of shame, a lot of wanting to hide these worries. And that's one of the things that propagates it as well. The OCD says, don't tell anyone. This is a dangerous topic. You shouldn't disclose it. You should keep it to yourself. And if you keep working at it, keep seeking reassurance, things will get better. Just keep doing that. Of course, that just makes things worse. By the time he saw me, he wasn't just anxious, suffering from OCD, attentional issues. He was also severely depressed. Because this was taking such a toll on him, his mood had greatly suffered. He wasn't enjoying things anymore. His energy was low. He couldn't sleep. He had no appetite. So once we identified the anxiety, called it OCD, labeled it that. And of course, he had his own hesitation believing it was OCD. And that's one of the other core features of OCD is it can be very hard for people to accept that they have OCD. And that's because that's one of the common lies that OCD tells. It's, you don't have OCD. This is an actual fear you have to pay attention to. This is real anxiety that you should be alert to. And OCD doesn't like to reveal itself. After a few sessions, some psychoeducation, he finally admitted, okay, sounds like there's OCD here. And that provided some relief, actually. But then we had to get to the core fear. What was driving this anxiety? What was driving this OCD? What was underneath all of this? That's when we start to follow the logical or often illogical progression of anxious thoughts, how they sort of lead from one to the other in this ruminative cycle. So we followed the fear to its core. The initial fear was, I worry that I will make a mistake. A common OCD intrusive thought. And then you want to follow that thought, follow the fear. Well, if you make a mistake, sure, big deal. What are the consequences of that? Why are you afraid of that? Well, if I make a mistake, I might get fired, okay? And the consequences of that potentially, well, if the mistake's big enough, I might lose my license to practice law. Okay, so you might lose your ability to practice law. Tell me more. What would happen then? Well, then I would lose my income, my ability to support my family. Okay, and then what would happen? And then he paused and took a deep breath. And I could see him grow anxious just even thinking about this. And he said, well, then my family would leave me. I wouldn't be able to support them. My wife would leave and move in with her parents, probably try to divorce me, and I would be left on my own without a way to even support myself. I'd be too ashamed to even look at my child. Okay, and then what would happen? And then my life would be over. I wouldn't be able to recover from that. And there it was, the true fear. Not a typo made at work, a small mistake, or even big mistake at work. It was the fear that everybody would leave him and his life would fall to shambles and he would not be able to recover from it. And underlying this entire cascade is the one belief, the one core fear. I won't be able to recover. I won't be able to address whatever happens. That's a common cognitive distortion in OCD, that something will come up, and sure, because uncertainty is there, and part of OCD treatment is accepting a sense of uncertainty, and maybe he will make a mistake that is huge, gets him fired. But it's the sensation that you won't be able to then bounce back, won't be able to address and problem solve your way out of it. That's the thing that continues to propagate the anxiety to some degree. So then what was the target of treatment? And of course, as initially may surprise people who go into OCD treatment, it's not trying to convince someone, make someone believe that they won't make a mistake, that their obsessional thought, intrusive thought around whatever they're worried about won't come true. That can just further feed the OCD and anxiety. Rather, we accept that this thing might come true. George may make a mistake that gets him fired, may lose his career, may even face losing his license. And facing that anxiety and being okay with it, not interacting with that worry, not trying to solve it or find certainty within it. A central part of OCD treatment, of course, is also stopping the compulsions. Without that, you won't get any progress. So you have to stop reassurance seeking. He had to stop double checking, triple, quadruple checking all of his work and sort of send emails without even rereading them. But here's the overlooked part of OCD treatment. It's also building confidence. Building one's sense that they can remain resilient, that if challenges come up, they'll be able to manage them. After all, George was a very smart guy, right? He went to a prestigious law school, worked at a very prestigious law firm. He could figure his way out if he made a mistake. And it can be very nuanced, and you have to work with a therapist on this to make sure it's also not a reassurance-seeking thought or a way to chase away uncertainty. Rather, it's just a way of building confidence, building self-assurance that OCD doesn't need to take away and zap someone's sense of resilience. Rather, remind someone, reinforce their own sense of resilience, challenge the cognitive distortion that if something bad happens, I'll be completely victim and impotent to do anything about it. And that was one of the things that really helped George get better. Having a renewed sense of his own resilience, of his own ability to tackle challenges as they come up. And sure enough, as he started treatment, dedicated himself to it, he was seeing a ACT and ERP therapist I assigned him to. He was taking an SSRI as well. And his symptoms started to improve. And eventually his internal monologue changed from, I have to make sure I don't make a mistake, to maybe I'll make a mistake, maybe I won't. And if I do, I'll be able to manage my way out of it. And then stop the intrusive thought, the ruminative spiral right there. And I think for anybody, OCD or not, having that sense of resilience, that sense of being able to acknowledge an uncertainty, a worst case scenario, that maybe it will happen, maybe it won't. And if it happens, I'll find a way to address it. And then being able to move on with your life, live in the present. That's a very, very powerful tool for anybody. I'm happy to say George went on to be a father of a lovely daughter. His wife gave birth a few months into his treatment, and he was able to welcome her, to experience fatherhood. And of course, there was a sense of responsibility, a sense of new obligation, but it didn't trigger the sort of ruminative, anxiety-inducing cycle it could have before treatment. So here's the lesson that George can teach us. We all encounter uncertain situations, anxiety-inducing new responsibilities and roles. And what allows us not to feel trapped is understanding our ability, our own innate ability to be resilient, to endure it. After all, we all survive heartbreak, setbacks, embarrassment, and oftentimes we move on from it even stronger than before. It's how we grow. So next time anxiety tries to creep up in your life, instead of asking, what will happen if this goes wrong? Ask yourself this: if it does go wrong, what makes me so certain I won't be able to handle it? And thank you so much for sticking around to the end of today's video. I hope you found it useful. Please consider liking and subscribing, and I hope to see you next week in another mental health video. Thanks and have a good week.